Good Hunters. I'm Nikki and this is my booktube channel, and today I'm going to be doing a let's talk about, and I'm going to talk about Bloodborne. That's a video game. I will explain everything, don't worry. So this is a video game made in 2015 by FromSoft. They've done Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 through 3, Sekiro, and I think those are the only ones that are like Bloodborne. They've done other games, but specifically these ones, it started with Demon Souls, and it's a game where you play as, and except for maybe Sekiro, you don't really have a name. They give you like a title, like in Bloodborne it's Hunter. And you sort of wake up and you see the world has gone to shit, and you are a weakling at the beginning, and then you have to kill some big ass boss monsters a lot, because it's not an easy game. It takes practice and patience for all of them, and yeah, so Bloodborne is more of Victorian Lovecraftian. Demon Souls and Dark Souls have a more medieval feel, and Sekiro is set in Japan, a feudal Japan maybe. I've not played it. So yeah, it's Bloodborne is very Victorian, and as I said, Lovecraftian. There's a blood curse, which is very Lovecraftian, and there's old gods, which again, and I'm not good at the game. I managed to beat the first boss on my own, and then the second boss I had help, and then I have trouble even with regular enemies. So I'm not good at it, but I want to continue playing it, and I've watched a lot about the lore, because that's what keeps me interested, and that's also what makes me interested in Demon Souls and Dark Souls, but I'll get into that. So Bloodborne is different, I think, than most media, even other video games, because it tells a story over time. But even then, it's not like the whole story. So in Bloodborne, you go there looking for a cure for something, and as you're on a table, you get attacked, and then you wake up and the person that's helping you is dead, and then you're there and there's a werewolf, and you're like, what? So you either, if you're a regular player, you sort of sprint past it and go, but essentially you die to this werewolf thing, and you wake up in I think it's the dream. I'm never sure if when you die you go to the dream or you're in the dream. Doesn't matter. That's why it's a bit confusing. And you're given weapons, and you meet someone there if you want to. And then you go back out and you kill the werewolf, hopefully, and there are NPCs to talk to you, but you don't have to. The only one you're supposed to talk to is the doll, because she helps upgrade you. But a lot of people like talking to the NPCs because you never see them. You only hear their voices for most of them. I think there's a couple NPCs you see because you can fight them. But even when you finish it, if you haven't looked at a lot of the items, or if you look at it and you don't read it, you don't really understand what's happened. You can sort of glean it, but it's not really told. So because a lot of the lore is on the item description, for weapons, like who made it, why they made it, all that kind of stuff. And the NPCs are very strange. Like, one of the first ones that makes it clear that it's strange is Yosefka, who runs a clinic, but after a certain point, it's not really her anymore. She sounds different. And then there's of course the doll, who was based upon a woman, Maria, a hunter, Maria, who you don't even get to see until a DLC. And then there's the moon presence, who's creepy as fuck, but she's the final boss. Kind of. It's because you can play extra dungeons that have harder bosses. So yeah, not everything is explained to you, and it might take multiple playthroughs for you to understand it. Some of the best stories are, of course, the old hunter that you meet, Germain, his connection with the moon presence, and his connection with Maria and the doll. There is, I've called it the Gascoigne family sadness. The sort of second boss is Father Gascoigne, who's a different type of hunter, and you can meet his daughter. He either has one or two. I'm not 100% sure about the second one, but there's definitely one. He has a wife, and there's someone else who I've heard might be the wife's father. I can't remember his name, but you don't meet him till later. And that is just a tragedy from the minute you talk to the little girl to the minute you have to fight Gascoigne. You find his wife, and then you tell the little girl to go somewhere safe, and shit happens. And then of course there's Yoseska, as I said. She has a clinic, which is a safe space. And then there's the Odin Chapel Dweller, who is actually extremely nice, and he looks creepy, but he is very, very nice, and his place is safe. But when you send people there, stuff happens, and it's like just depressing. One of my favorite places that I've never been to, but I've seen a lot of lore, is the Canehursts. They're like vampires, essentially, because it's all about the blood in Bloodborne. That's why people turn into monsters. They're hunting for the blood. There's different types of blood. There's old blood. There's Canehurst blood. There might be a third type that I can't remember. And so the Canehursts are vampires. They're led by a queen who you can't marry, which I don't know if you were supposed to at some point or not. But she's got like a man in the iron mask style, so you never see her face. There's a woman in the city that you meet that has a blood like the Canehurst blood, so that's kind of suspicious. And it's also about children, like the old gods want children. There's a couple of old god children you have to put out of their misery, and it's just a lovely video game that tells you virtually nothing, and you just have to sort of figure it out on your own. And I believe the other games are like that, except maybe Sekiro. But Bloodborne just like captured me, because I don't want to play demons. I'll watch videos about them, but Bloodborne is one game I actually want to try and play, even though I'm horrendous at it. It's just, the story is so good. Like, you just want to keep going and see what's happening, even though I know what happens. So I think that it's great that they can give it to you, the story, but they don't tell you everything. And, you know, when your first playthrough, maybe you pick the bad ending, which is you just waking up, and you're like, oh, was that a dream? And then there's 2 other endings, so you're like, well, now I have to play that. And maybe you got the bad ending because you didn't find the stuff, and so now you go look for the stuff. They're umbilical cords, I believe, of old god children that didn't make it. You get them. There's one you find on its own, and I think one you get from fake Yosefka, one you get from another woman. You can find 4, and I'm not sure where the 4th one is. I can't remember that. So, yeah. Like I said, I thought the gameplay is not easy. But if you want to learn, you don't have to play. There are plenty of videos. The Bloodborne lore is still talked about. The Reddit for Bloodborne is still active. People are still playing it. I think especially since Demon's Souls got a remake on PS5, people are sort of hoping one for Bloodborne. There are Souls-like games and also Bloodborne-like games, but they just don't. They have the same combat style, but not necessarily the same story. Yeah. I don't know how to explain this. I feel like I've done a really bad job, but when you're playing the game, you see like the werewolves and the humans that have turned into sort of monstrous beings who are trying to kill you, and you're not sure why, and you're like, okay, I'll kill them. And the first boss, it can be Gascoigne, and he's like also like a werewolf type thing, but there's also another one who is a giant werewolf tree thing, and you're like, holy shit. And then as you go on, you're fighting like monsters with tentacles, so you're fighting old gods, and you're fighting like are you fighting them? Yeah, I think in almost all the Soulsborne games, you fight something that is a mass of limbs and gore. You fight witches, and you go to all these different places that are connected by this blood curse that nobody is sure how happened. They don't ever say that specifically. Like, you see the old gods, sort of. Or the old gods, there's a specific term for them. They're old gods-like, and you fight them, and you can find items off of them, but you never know what the old gods actually look like, except for the moon presence. It's creepy. And I don't tell you, and if you go into the other dungeons, they're called Chalice Dungeons, you're going down, I believe, into a city that's older than your main city, and they knew the old gods, and that's all connected to how you got to now when you're playing the game. But they don't ever tell you, like, where the first one came from, who got the blood, why did they have the blood, how did it turn from whatever it was back then into what it is now. They used it for healing, but the healing turned people into monsters, and you're like, where did that happen? And you can sort of figure that out. So yeah, it's great. And then you get into the DLC, which gives some background into Maria, because you get to fight her. She's one of the hardest bosses, I believe, and she was a hunter, and her and the other old hunters, that's what it's called, went to a fishing village, very Lovecraftian, where people are fish people, Lovecraft again. They don't hide it, that they took a lot of inspiration from Lovecraft for the monsters and things, and they did something very bad that nobody's 100, you can sort of see what it is, but nobody's like 100% sure, because it's very strange. And she was like, I don't want to be a hunter anymore. So she dropped her fancy weapons down a well, and she went and was a guardian for one of the schools that they subjected people to tests, I think using the blood of the old gods. And she took care of them, and then when you fight her, she's a badass, and you're like, oh shit, she's gonna kill me. And then on to that, there's also a character called Ludwig, who was with them, and he started this whole healing church thing, but it sort of went away from what he started, because it's been, I'm not sure how long it's supposed to have been. They don't tell you that either. The timeline's sort of weird, especially in the DLC, because you're going like back in time, but then you're also kind of in the present because you fight a god that's being born at the same time. So that's a little weird. And you feel bad for him, and he's a really hard boss fight too, apparently. And I just like that the story is told to you either not at all. If you don't want a story, you can sort of not have a story, but if you want it, it's there, and it's given to you piecemeal. And it's a great story. It's a great story. The lore is amazing. I have my own ideas about it, so I don't want to say it and influence anybody, but it's a great story, and I just think everybody should like look up the lore, especially if you're I don't know video games, but the storytelling is what I'm connecting here. It's like when I talk about One Piece. Yeah, it's a manga and it's for kids, not this shitty one. But you can look at the story, and it'll tell you a lot about how other stories of the same genre should be told, in my opinion. This is all just my opinion. So, yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say. This was a bit rambly. I'll probably redo it, like I'm gonna redo some other ones. But I just really wanted to talk about Bloodborne. And I don't have a lot of people to talk about it with. So, you guys get it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. And farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.